While all students who enter college-level writing classes have had at least some practice in writing essays, most have spent little time considering the person or persons who read their work. This is understandable, since their audience is always their teacher or writing instructor. However, college writing classes not only prepare students for assignments that they will write in college, they also prepare students for writing in a professional environment. Therefore, before you begin any writing assignments, you must consider how your writing will connect with the audience that includes more than just your instructor or professor. In this presentation, we will take a look at how to write for a general audience. In general, academic writing should be clear and direct. It should contain not only knowledge of the assigned subject, but your original ideas about the subject, which you then support through the use of secondary information that you find in your textbook or in scholarly journals or books. Professional writing also requires clarity and specific use of language, but it requires a greater variety of styles due to the different kinds of writing required. Ultimately, the audience to which your writing is directed will greatly determine the choices you make as a writer. As I've said, there are many different types of writing. Texting is one, posting on social media websites is another is writing a resume. Most of the writing that you do in your everyday activities is directed at a specific audience, friends, family, a romantic partner, and who you're writing to determines how you write and what words you use. For example, your text to someone you're dating would look different and sound different than a text you write to your parent. Writing in an academic environment or a professional environment is no different, but it is trickier since you do not necessarily have a personal relationship with the reader. In many cases, in fact, you don't even know who the reader is. Yet the way you write and the words you use depend on this strange and invisible audience. Thus, before you write, you must imagine who your audience is, what it needs, what it expects, and what it knows and doesn't know. Awareness of your audience will give your writing purpose and life. You must always assume that your audience needs something from you, and this need creates the reason for your writing. Even when you are writing an essay in this class, and you know that only I will read it, nevertheless, you cannot write the essay for Dr. Alemont. I do not need anything from you. Instead, you must consider what kind of person would want to read your essay, why they would want to read it, and what they need from you in order to get it. Your choice of an audience will affect how you present your material and the language choices that you make. In addition to identifying its needs, you must also reckon with the expectations of the audience. Some of these are obvious. Any audience expects a writer to be honest, fair, and respectful. Any language that partakes in self-righteousness, prejudice, or rudeness violates the audience's expectations. Worse, you risk alienating the people to which you are writing. For this reason, in both professional and academic writing, one's own personal religious and political beliefs ought to be avoided. Even if an assignment requires you to write on a political or religious issue, you must adopt an objective, impersonal attitude so that you can speak to people of different beliefs. In academic writing, objectivity is prized, so you should also refrain from referring to yourself in your writing. And since you do not intimately know the people to whom you are writing, you should refrain from referring to them as well. In other words, do not use you, your, I, my, or other first person and second person pronouns. When you are writing in an academic setting or a professional setting, you are trying to inform the audience about a particular subject. Thus, you must assume that you have knowledge that the reader does not. Otherwise, there would be no point in your writing an essay and no point in anyone reading it. But before you address this knowledge gap, you should consider what knowledge you and the reader already share. Common knowledge varies depending on your audience. For example, if I were discussing Samuel Beckett with some other English professors, I assume that they would know Beckett, have read some of his works, know when he wrote, know what his general themes are, and understand him within the cultural context of post-World War II European culture. This would be common knowledge, at least for English professors, knowledge that I would share with my audience. However, if I were talking to you about Beckett, I would assume that you did not have this same knowledge. And if I assume that you did, our conversation would probably be frustrating for both of us. For this class, assume that your audience shares a general knowledge base with you. It knows, for example, that this building is the Eiffel Tower. Assume that your audience also knows that the Eiffel Tower is in Paris, and that Paris is in France, and that France lies across the Atlantic Ocean from the United States. You may assume, or may not assume, that many in your audience know that it was designed and built by Gustave Eiffel. On the other hand, most of your audience members may not know that it was built for the Paris Exposition of 1889, nor may they know that the Eiffel Tower was the world's tallest building until 1930. In determining what is common knowledge, always use common sense. Finally, we reach the knowledge gap, the reason that you are writing. You have an idea in your head, and the idea is how you understand a particular subject or topic. The audience does not share that understanding with you. How do you bridge this gap? How do you allow the audience to see in its head what you see in yours? This is the struggle of all writing. The first step is to commit to using words and sentences with absolute clarity. You have to make what you see clear to the reader, and the only way you can do that is through clear and well-organized writing. This is the skill that you will be developing in this course. You already have the ability, but if you want to reach as many people as possible, if you want to bridge as many gaps as you can, you will need to elevate this ability. This course will give you every opportunity to do so. Imagine giving a speech to 500 people. As you talk, you look from person to person. Each person is different. Each face is somewhat unclear, and the expressions that you see don't give you a clear indication of what the audience is thinking. Nevertheless, you can see in the faces of the audience a desire to hear you, and you recognize yourself in them. You understand that if what you have to say is important to you, it should be important to them. That is the audience you're writing for. When you write, think of these faces. Be clear, be precise, be compassionate, and make them understand.